Something strange is happening. You feel detached from the world, emotions surge out of nowhere, and everything you once cared about suddenly feels meaningless. But this isn't chaos, it's clarity. The walls you built to survive are falling, and what's underneath is who you really are. You're not losing your mind, you're waking up to it. You've probably felt it, that strange, quiet pull beneath the surface of your life. It starts like a whisper, hidden behind the noise of daily routines. Something feels off, but you can't explain why. You wake up one morning and the world feels slightly different. The coffee tastes the same, the streets look the same. But somehow, you sense there's a thin veil between you and everything else. Like reality has lost its weight. You keep going through the motions, trying to convince yourself that everything's fine. You smile when you're supposed to. You laugh when the world expects you to. But deep inside, a question stirs that won't go away. Is this really all there is? That's how it begins, not with fireworks or visions, but with a quiet disconnection from the life you once called normal. At first, you blame it on stress, exhaustion, or maybe even age. You tell yourself it's just a phase. But as days pass, you start noticing things you never saw before. Patterns repeat. Numbers appear. Conversations seem to carry hidden meanings. And people you once related to start to feel distant. You sit in meetings, surrounded by chatter. And suddenly it hits you. None of this feels real anymore. It's like everyone's wearing a mask, performing a role they don't even know they're playing. That's when you realize you've stopped believing the story. The story of success. The story of control. The story that told you who you should be, what you should want, and what happiness is supposed to look like. And now, without that story, everything feels like it's falling apart. You might cry for no reason. You might feel lost, restless, or even angry. You might wake up at 3 a.m. Heart pounding. Mind racing with questions you can't silence. What's happening to me? Why do I feel so different? Why can't I go back to how things used to be? But deep down, you know, there is no going back. Something inside you is changing. The old world is fading. And a new one is quietly taking shape behind the scenes. You're starting to notice truth hiding in plain sight. How people chase distractions to fill a void. How the world worships noise and forgets silence. How we trade authenticity for approval. And call it success. It's painful at first. Because awakening means losing your illusions. And illusions are what made you feel safe. You start to realize that much of what you believed was borrowed. From family, teachers, media, culture. Ideas handed down like a costume you were told to wear. And now, that costume feels heavy. Too tight. Too fake. So, you begin to shed it. Layer by layer. But no one warned you that awakening feels like grief. Because it is grief. You're mourning the version of yourself that existed inside the dream. The one who believed that happiness could be found in what the world told you to chase. At first, it feels like a loss. Then slowly, it starts to feel like freedom. You begin to crave silence. Not the empty kind, but the kind that feels alive. Like the whole universe is breathing with you. You start noticing beauty in things you once ignored. The way sunlight dances through trees. The sound of rain against a window. The stillness of early morning. You stop seeking answers outside of yourself. And begin listening to that quiet inner voice you used to dismiss. That's your soul. And for the first time, you can actually hear it. It doesn't speak in words. It speaks in knowing. In calm. In truth. But that truth doesn't come easy. It tears through everything false. Every belief. Every label. Every illusion you've built to feel secure. You start questioning everything. Your job. Your relationships. Even the meaning of your own existence. And people notice. They tell you you've changed. They say you're distant, withdrawn, maybe even cold. But the truth is, you're not distant. You're becoming real. And real makes others uncomfortable. Because it reminds them of what they're avoiding. You begin to see how fear controls so much of human life. Fear of being alone. Fear of being wrong. Fear of being unseen. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's as if you've stepped behind the curtain of the world. And now you're watching the play from backstage. You see the actors. You see the script. You see how everyone's lines are written by someone else. And you stand there thinking, do I still want to play this part? That's when the real unraveling begins. It's not the world falling apart. It's the illusion of the world dissolving. You may feel heavy sadness some days. Like your old identity is dying. And in a way, it is. Because awakening isn't about becoming more. It's about becoming less. Less conditioned. Less controlled. Less asleep. It's like your soul has been buried. Under years of noise, fear, and expectation. And now it's finally pushing through the surface. Aching for light. But that light burns at first. It blinds you before it frees you. You'll start noticing synchronicities. Perfectly timed moments. That feel like messages meant just for you. You'll sense energy more deeply. Sometimes you'll walk into a room and feel tension before anyone speaks. Other times you'll meet someone and know instantly you were meant to. You'll crave solitude. Not because you're lonely, but because you're remembering how to be whole. And the world around you, the one that once made sense, will now feel too loud, too artificial, too shallow to contain what's waking up inside you. It's like living between two realities. One is familiar, predictable, and heavy. The other is light, strange, and full of meaning. But not fully formed yet. And you're standing between them, trying to keep your balance. As everything old fades into mist. Some call it awakening. Others call it the dark night of the soul. Whatever name you give it. It's the same doorway. And once you've walked through, you can't unsee what you've seen. You'll start craving truth. In a way that feels almost holy. You'll want to understand why you're here. What consciousness really is. What existence really means. And the deeper you go, the more your old identity, the one built on labels and roles, begins to dissolve. Who are you if not your job? Your name? Your story? Your past? That question will haunt you. Until it sets you free. You'll realize that awakening isn't about becoming something new. It's about remembering something ancient. Something that's always been inside you. Waiting for you to notice. And when you do, you start feeling everything differently. The anger. The sadness. The confusion. They're not enemies anymore. They're signals. Each one pointing you closer to what's real. You begin to notice that everything you resist is actually guiding you. Every painful moment is peeling away another layer of illusion. Every disappointment is breaking open a hidden door. And then, without warning, you start to sense a calm beneath it all. A deep, unshakable stillness. That was there all along. It's the eye of the storm. The center of your being. The place inside you that was never touched by fear, pain, or confusion. It's the real you. The one who's been watching all along. But here's the strange part. Once you touch that stillness, the world doesn't magically become easier. In fact, sometimes, it becomes even harder. Because truth demands that everything false must go. Jobs may fall away. Relationships may fade. Dreams may shift. It's not punishment. It's purification. You're being refined by awareness itself. And though it hurts, there's a beauty to it. A sacred kind of destruction. That clears the way for something honest to take root. That's the unraveling. Not the end, but the beginning of seeing with new eyes. The person you used to be is fading. And what's emerging is raw, real, awake. It's messy. It's confusing. But it's also the most alive you've ever felt. Because for the first time, you're not sleepwalking through your life. You're actually here. Awake, aware, alive. And though it might feel like you're losing everything, you're really gaining something far greater. Yourself. You're not losing your mind. You're losing your illusions. And that's what awakening really is. Something changes the moment you stop fighting the chaos. When you finally whisper, okay, I'll listen. The noise begins to quiet. At first, it feels like surrender. Like you're giving up control. But what's really happening is something deeper. You're stepping out of the storm. And realizing the storm was never outside you. It was within. You begin to see that the thoughts rushing through your head were never truly yours. They were echoes. Old beliefs, fears, and expectations. Playing on repeat. Keeping you trapped in a version of reality that was never real. For the first time, you become the observer instead of the character. You notice how your mind reacts to everything. A word, a look, a memory. And you start to ask, why? Why does this bother me? Why do I need to be right? Why do I feel small when someone else shines? These questions are the light piercing through the cracks. Each one burns a little. But each one frees you a little more. And then, something miraculous happens. You start feeling again. Not the shallow highs and lows of everyday life. But something deeper. A full-body awareness of being alive. You cry easier. You laugh harder. You feel energy pulsing through your skin. Like you're connected to something vast and invisible. You begin to sense meaning in everything. A song plays at the right moment. A stranger says something that answers the question you didn't ask out loud. You start to realize life isn't random. It's responsive. And it's speaking to you in a language you're finally remembering. That's when you understand. You were never waking up to something. You were waking up as something. Consciousness. Awareness itself. The part of you that exists beyond story, beyond name, beyond time. But this awareness doesn't shout. It whispers. It waits for stillness. And the more you listen, the more the world starts to make sense in an entirely new way. You begin to see your old struggles differently. The heartbreaks, the losses, the disappointments. They weren't punishments. They were teachers. Each one cracked your shell, forcing the light in. Each one stripped away a layer of illusion. Until only truth remained. You realize that every painful ending was preparing you for this. The moment when you could finally see clearly. Because awakening doesn't make life perfect. It makes life real. You stop chasing constant happiness. And begin to understand peace. You stop seeking meaning in the future. And start finding it in the present. And the present, this tiny slice of now, becomes sacred. The air feels different. Colors look richer. The world seems alive again. As if every tree, every sound, every breath is whispering, "Welcome back." You start to see that awakening isn't something you do. It's something that happens when you stop doing. When you stop pretending. When you stop trying to hold the universe in your hands. And finally let it hold you. This realization changes everything. The people who once drained you no longer have power over your peace. The things that once controlled you lose their pull. You stop trying to fix yourself. Because you realize there was never anything broken. Only forgotten. Your body feels lighter. Your thoughts slow down. You begin to trust your intuition. That quiet inner compass. That always knew the way home. And just when you start to think you understand what's happening, the awakening deepens. It doesn't happen in one grand moment. It happens in waves. Each wave pulls away what no longer belongs. And brings something new to shore. One day, you'll wake up feeling peaceful and clear. The next, you'll feel the old fears return. Like ghosts testing the strength of your new light. That's when the real growth happens. Not when you escape the darkness. But when you learn to see through it. You begin to notice that the fear isn't the enemy. It's the doorway. Each fear that surfaces is something ready to be understood, integrated, and released. And so, instead of running, you start facing everything. You breathe through it. You let the storm move through you. Without becoming it. That's power. Not the kind the world teaches. The quiet kind that can't be taken away. And slowly, you begin to live differently. You stop trying to get somewhere. You start being here. You realize time isn't chasing you. It's unfolding through you. You stop comparing, competing, and proving. Instead, you start noticing, appreciating, allowing. You start realizing that everything you were seeking was never outside you. It was always in you. Buried under the noise of who you thought you had to be. And that's when you start to remember. You've been here before. Not in this body. Not in this lifetime. But this feeling, this awareness. It's ancient. It's the same spark that's lived through every age. Every world. Every experience. You remember that consciousness has no beginning and no end. That every person, every soul, is another reflection of the same infinite awareness. You're now rediscovering. It's overwhelming at first. To realize how vast you are. How interconnected everything truly is. But it's also the most peaceful knowing you've ever felt. Because once you understand that separation was the illusion, loneliness disappears. Once you realize that time is a story told by the mind, the rush fades. Once you feel that love isn't something you find, but something you are, everything starts to align. Now, the world around you still looks the same. But you move through it differently. You respond instead of react. You listen instead of judge. You forgive, not because it's moral, but because you see that holding anger is like drinking poison and expecting peace. You begin to see people as mirrors. Each one showing you something about yourself. The kind, the cruel, the lost, the wise. All reflections of the same infinite field of awareness. Playing out its own awakening in countless forms. You start to realize that the universe isn't something happening to you. It's something happening through you. And that realization changes the way you breathe. Every moment becomes sacred. Every breath becomes a prayer. Every encounter becomes a lesson. But there's a secret hidden inside this peace. Because just when you think you've reached the light, a new darkness appears. Not the old kind, not fear or confusion. But a deeper silence. A void that feels endless. This is the final stage before true awakening. When even your identity as the awakened one begins to dissolve. You begin to feel yourself slipping beyond the concept of you. Beyond thoughts, beyond form. You feel consciousness watching itself. A mirror looking into infinity. It's beautiful. It's terrifying. And it's real. You realize that awakening isn't a destination. It's an endless unfolding. A spiral that keeps expanding. As your awareness deepens. And that's when the final truth dawns. You're not becoming something greater. You're remembering you already are. The mind will still whisper. The world will still test you. But now you know what's behind it all. A quiet, unshakable awareness. That can't be destroyed. Can't be lost. And can never go crazy. Because it's the one watching all of it happen. That's awakening. And it's only just beginning. Now that you've glimpsed the truth within, the real work begins. The transformation isn't just internal, it starts to touch everything around you. You notice how your thoughts shape your reality. The fear that once controlled you no longer dictates your actions. You see how emotions flow through you, not as chains, but as messages. And suddenly, life feels less like a puzzle. And more like a living dialogue. Every moment becomes a choice. Every action, a reflection of awareness. You stop reacting out of habit. And start responding from presence. The world still tests you. Challenges still appear. Old patterns try to resurface. But now you notice them. You feel the pull. And you choose differently. Instead of anger, you pause. Instead of worry, you breathe. Instead of rushing, you observe. You begin to sense that the universe isn't separate from you. It's part of your consciousness unfolding. And every interaction, every encounter, every challenge is an opportunity to practice this new awareness. You notice synchronicities more clearly. Moments that once seemed random now feel purposeful. A conversation, a glance, a decision. All guiding you deeper into alignment. And then you realize. Awakening isn't just seeing reality differently. It's living differently. You stop chasing approval, money, or status as the measure of success. You stop comparing yourself to others. You stop defining happiness as external. Instead, you cultivate presence. You honor your inner guidance. You seek meaning in connection, purpose, and being. Even solitude becomes sacred. It's not loneliness anymore. It's a space for integration, reflection, and clarity. And yet, even with these insights, something stirs in the depths. A quiet, unnameable tension, like a door slightly ajar. You sense that there's more. More to the awakening. More to consciousness. More to this strange and wondrous journey. The mind whispers. What lies beyond? What comes next? And the deeper you go, the more you understand. Awakening isn't linear. There's no end point. Each stage opens to another. Each insight revealing a greater mystery. You start to sense that the world you once knew is a reflection of what's still asleep inside others. And that your awakening is a ripple. Every thought, every intention, every act of awareness spreads further than you can see. And this realization changes everything. You act with intention. You speak with care. You move with purpose. And yet, the mystery remains. Because while you've glimpsed the infinite, you haven't touched the full depth of it yet. The light you see now is only a beginning. A first wave of clarity. And beyond it lies a vast ocean of consciousness, waiting to be explored. Every decision now carries weight. You notice how your energy influences others. You see patterns of collective thought. And realize you are part of the current. Your awakening is not isolated. It resonates, ripples, and merges with the greater whole. The old self, the one you thought you were, has dissolved almost completely. And in its place stands awareness, pure and unbound. But even here, a question lingers. How do you fully integrate this awakening into a world still asleep? How do you navigate life while seeing its illusions? And just as clarity begins to settle, a shadow appears on the edge of your consciousness. A question that cannot yet be answered. What if this awakening is only the beginning of something far larger? Something beyond comprehension. A door opens, wide, unseen, and beckoning. And you can feel the pulse of infinity, calling you to step through. But what lies beyond that door is something you cannot yet imagine. And this is where the journey pauses, for now. You've awakened. You've begun to integrate. But the next revelation, the next level of consciousness, is just beyond the horizon. And just as clarity begins to settle, a shadow appears on the edge of your consciousness, a question that cannot yet be answered. What if this awakening is only the beginning of something far larger? Something beyond comprehension. A door opens, wide, unseen, and beckoning, and you can feel the pulse of infinity calling you to step through. But what lies beyond that door is something you cannot yet imagine.